I quit self-improvement and I decided to start following the fool's path. The reason I quit was because it was just making my life worse. I realized the constant overthinking, the constant need for improvement, the constant need to change my situation, to create a better life, the constant need to improve myself, the over-analyzing, overthinking, the constant preparation and doing 1,000 different things to try to enjoy my life more. I realized it was a sickness. And it's one of those sicknesses that go under the radar. It's not obvious that it's a sickness, and it's not obvious that you're spreading the sickness to others, right? And the sickness is really spread through social media, through belief, belief that something needs to change for you to be happy, the belief that, you can't enjoy your life right now, the belief that you need XYZ to live a good life, the constant belief that is just making your life worse. Now, it's not to say that improving your life is bad, but it's this whole mindset to self-improvement. It's this whole lifestyle and just everything that goes along with self-improvement in a lot of ways is just a sickness. It's not actually improvement. It's making your life worse. And so I decided, fuck it, I'm going for the fool's path. I'm going to actually decide to enjoy life now, to stop overthinking, to stop over-preparing, over-planning. I'm just going to throw myself into life. I'm going to go on an adventure, like you would do when you're traveling or you're going on a hike. You want a sense of adventure, or the best films, right? This sense of adventure. I'm going to throw myself into life. And instead of trying to constantly improve myself or improve my life, I'm just going to throw myself in and experience life instead. And I'm going to do things I enjoy, and I'm going to go and I'm going to pursue things that just I enjoy doing, instead of pursuing things that I think are good for me, but that are taking the zest out of life, right? You can run a business in two different ways. You can pick a business just to make money, and you can discipline yourself to go do that. And you can go through a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, and ultimately remove the zest from life. And you may, some people do succeed in that. They make a lot of money, but then their life is, what's the point, right? Their life is just them doing a bunch of things they don't like, just to keep living a life that they don't enjoy. And then when they finally use the money that they made to then go and live their life, finally the zest comes back in. But don't you see how that's kind of like just a long process? Like your years, decades of running a business or a job or whatever, just to get to a point where you finally start living your life, where you finally do the things that actually, that I'm talking about right now, where you finally start throwing yourself into life, going for experiences, going on the adventure, enjoying the moment. Why take so long to get there? Why not run a business that you enjoy? Why not it take a bit longer, or even make a lot less money, but you're living, you've got that zest, right? You enjoy your life. So that's what I realized, is I was running businesses that I didn't really enjoy. There was parts of it, don't get me wrong, that I really enjoyed, but the way I was going about it, the way I was trying to get clients, was a way that I didn't enjoy at all. And then even the things I was trying to teach and coach my clients really wasn't something that kind of I really loved at certain points in my business career. And I was doing this with my habits, right? I was waking up early, taking cold showers, trying to get 10K steps, right? Tracking my macros, tracking my calories. All of these things put me more in my head and less in my life, right? They put me more in analyze, improve, statistics, sucking the life out of me, right? And yeah, maybe I improved in those areas, but, there's a good quote, and I think it's in the Bible, that says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? And that was my experience with a lot of self-development, right? I may have gained in a couple of areas, but I lost the soul, right? I lost the reason to do that at all. Because if you really question, all right, why am I trying to do any of this? Why am I trying to run a business? Why am I trying to read a bunch of self-help books? Why am I trying to do good, positive habits? Why am I trying to improve my life or improve myself or get rid of, negative beliefs or improve my mindset? Why are you doing any of that at all? It's to enjoy your life, right? It's to create a better life for you and the people around you. And ultimately, what is a better life? A life that you enjoy, a life that you feel like it's your living life, as opposed to, just going through the motions or surviving, or even, just making a bunch of progress through your life. That's not living. That's not the adventure. You don't see, you don't watch Lord of the Rings and go, oh, damn, that's really inspiring because they were, tracking their macros every day. They were improving their life. They were adding good habits. No, because they went on a sense of adventure. And through that sense of adventure, you see the characters develop, right? And you see them improve in certain areas. You see them go from being kind of naive and kind of weak in some areas to being very strong, having strong characters, doing something difficult, right? But it's a different approach. It's going through the experience of life. They had something they really needed to do to save, the rest of, the people. And through that, they improved. But their focus wasn't really on improving themselves. Their focus was on the journey, really. And eventually, their focus was on saving humanity, really. But it wasn't on themselves. It wasn't on self-improvement. Right? But that story, if you've watched it, is very inspiring. But trust me, they weren't tracking 10K steps. They were probably walking 100K steps a day at some points. But and me and my girlfriend joke, like, at least in the first Lord of the Rings film, everybody's running everywhere. Watch it again, you'll notice this. Everybody is running everywhere. It's really weird. They just run, they run, they run. But it's a good example, right? They're probably walking 10K steps, no, 100K steps, but no one's tracking 10K steps. No one's trying to improve themselves through the amount of steps they're taking. No one's taking cold showers. I mean, they probably were, but they weren't doing it to improve themselves. They were just doing it because, they didn't have hot water. No one's reading tons and tons of books, overthinking, trying to get more and more and more knowledge. What they're doing is they're going into life and they're living. And that's kind of the shift I've had recently, is I've gone from, I just quit self-improvement and I just decided to take the Fool's Path. The Fool's Path, in other words, idiot maxing. Going into life, not trying to have all the knowledge, not trying to overthink, not trying to over-prepare or over-plan. Throwing myself into the deep end, learning how to swim. Right, that's what, Samwise and Frodo did. Is that? Yeah, that's their names. Apologies to the big fans, right? I love that film. I just haven't seen it in a while. Like, they just threw themselves in. They hesitated to begin with, but then they threw themselves in. They didn't have to prepare to throw themselves in. They developed along the journey, right? They would never have been able to, like by film 3, the beginning, the guys that started off, they were not the same people. They would never have been able to deal with the challenges that came up in film 3, that if they were in the beginning, the film 1, even if they'd prepared and tried to get knowledge and tried to read books and tried to improve themselves in little different areas and build habits, they would never have become the person that could deal with the challenges in film 3. And I'm trying to be vague because I hate spoiling films, right? So how did they get to become the people that could deal with the challenges and still come out on the other end, right? They did it through going through the film, right? They went through the journey. They developed along the way, right? They threw themselves in and they learned how to swim along the way. They didn't overthink, over-prepare, over-analyze, study, read multiple books, more books than this, right? They didn't try to get all the information before they took action, before they started living their life. But that's what self-improvement kind of does, right? It puts you in your head so that like you are taking action, but it's small different actions. It's not actions that are really going to change your life. It's not really things that are shaking up your life. It's safe things. You're doing safe things based on the information that you have. You're improving little areas. And then if you finally go for the kind of scary thing, you start the business, you move to a new country, or you start socializing, you start meeting new people, these scary things, you still do it in a way which is too about you, too about trying to improve yourself. And if you're not doing well, you start to judge yourself. You start to, to hate yourself. You start to, feel bad about yourself when you're not doing that well. Instead of, again, just throwing yourself in and just immersing yourself in the experience of life and just keep going. If it's struggling, you just keep going. You keep throwing yourself into the experience of life without too much thought about yourself. Occasionally you think about yourself, but you don't have this neurotic overthinking, over analyzing about yourself, this constant looking inwards, right? That's not living life. That's not the fool's way. And so that's what I moved away from. And I would highly recommend you do the same. I've got a lot more videos to come on this. So stick around if you like this idea, if you like this kind of new approach to self-improvement, which is just quitting self-improvement and following the fool's path. I'll speak to you soon. Peace.